Nice to meet you guys, and excited to host you on our stage. And maybe just to set the stage, can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, like your companies, the challenges you've had, etc., and then your latest F up that you had to go through, and how was it? And when I can see you laughing, so we can start from you.
Hello, my name is Gwen Diagram. So I work for a company called Glean. As you know, all of us are here pretty much scale up. So we're a company of about like around 80 people at the moment. We've grown quite a bit over the past couple of years. So when I joined about 2 years ago, it was only 40 people. So it's scaled up quite a bit. What we do is we create software to help people learn, which is really nice. It's nice to work on something nice. So yeah, about me, I'm the head of engineering. I'm quite new to this. So I was the principal engineering manager, and then I became the head of engineering. So probably the most, the most interesting that I've had lately was like, it's just a small one, but quite interesting. So a lot of these kind of roles is about communication and feedback. And I did this absolutely massive project of sorting out an engineering progression framework. And I wrote down all the communication strategy and everything, and I had it planned out so well. And I was like, all right, brilliant. I'm pretty sure I've got this. And shared it out first, shared it out to everyone. It was all going okay, I thought. And then on the day when I shared with the engineers, I showed them the progression framework that we went through, and I didn't share it with them ahead. So they had no opportunity to feedback, look through it. And so it's just here is your progression framework. This is where we've put you, bam. And not allowing people to look through and feedback earlier. I mean, that's a pretty up because you're just throwing things on people. So yeah, I guess the thing is no matter how much you actually go through and write a communication plan and figure it out, you're always going to miss things, and that's okay. You can fix it afterwards. So that's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool example because it reminds me of kind of like all the best practices around product development cycle. That most of the time, first step is to actually talk to users and kind of like understand whatever their language, etc. And I think very often I'm definitely guilty of that. You wake up, you have this brilliant idea in your mind, and then you're sharing it with people, and they're not as excited as you are. You're very confused, right? So I'm sure we're gonna. I think communication is just such a massive thing, especially in scale ups and in remote setups, etc. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna come around to that subject. But James, great to meet you too.
And you?
Yeah, tell us some more about company with the coolest name ever, and what has been your major fuck up recently?
Yeah, it's kind of unusual for businesses nowadays. We've got a name that tells you exactly what we do. Modern Milkman started 3 years ago on a mission, really. The founders really wanted to set up a business that could help tackle the plastic waste issues that are out there in the food supply chain, and hit upon the really old-fashioned traditional business of being a milkman, which was always doorstep delivered and pretty much always in return and reuse glass bottles. And thought, why the heck can't we reinvigorate that thing and modernize it? And so off it started, building out tech solutions to kind of remove all the barriers to entry. There's reasons why the industry as it was dwindling and dying. So mostly that being the because people nowadays aren't so keen on people knocking on the door asking for money each week to pay for the groceries. They're also not huge fans of writing paper notes and stuffing them in tops of milk bottles, and having to plan ahead that much. So as a business, very quickly put together a set of systems to allow customers to buy online, set up their subscriptions, and also to automate taking payment weekly. So it follows the same model Everything that we sell is either in return and reuse packaging or recyclable. We don't do single waste plastic. And that's kind of the ethic of the business. It's all about sustainability, but also doing it in a really convenient way. And that's a hard thing to deliver in the modern world. Supermarkets encourage people to bring their plastic containers or whatever now, and try and fill up. But it's a massively inconvenient thing. Whilst we think we've hit upon the solution, if we can do that to the doorstep en masse, then we're winning. So I got involved in the business when it was about 6 months old and had its first bits of systems in place, and we'd kind of proven that the model would work. Maybe 1,000 customers at that point. I've got involved and we've kind of then set about trying to build systems and architecture that will scale and take the business where it needs to be. So over the last two and a half years, we've gone from, say, that 1,000 customers-ish to we've got, I think, 130,000 right now. We launched in France last week, and we've got ambitions to probably quadruple the customer base again this year. And the great thing for us as we're building tech and building those custom numbers, because the business sustainability and the mission is built into the model. Pretty much no matter what we build, we're helping that whole thing about reducing plastic waste in the environment. It's almost impossible not to. So when you're there writing your lines of code or spinning up a new service in Azure or whatever it might be, you're contributing to that without even having to think about it too much. It's great. So yeah, that's what.
Now we're waiting for the cup. Yeah. Because so many things that can go wrong when you're scaling from 1,000 people to like 135,000. You said. So yeah. I'm sure you've seen everything.
So we were behind. I mean, early days we were caught out with COVID, because that obviously as soon as the first lockdown happened, suddenly an unexpected massive demand on services like ours. We were still on the old platform and up for many hours, many nights, bailing that thing out and keeping it going. So in some way, I mean, I don't know if we can really call it not quite realizing that COVID was going to do what it did. I think more recently, the tech team, over the last 9 months, we've grown massively. And through that, as the business has grown massively, and through that, we're all thinking, okay, yeah, we need to be the next level of engineering now. And we've probably slightly overthought things. And in some ways lost a little bit of agility in the way we approach getting stuff done. So we're prioritizing right. So yeah, as we've thrown more and more experienced people in, we've had to work on getting the balance of getting something in and out there which we can learn from over something which is beautifully architected, if you know what I mean. So we've perhaps in some areas slowed down more than we really should have done in the desire to build the best.
Yeah, and I see kind of like a bit of a pattern here, right? So I feel like, as the businesses scale, a lot of time of top engineers in the company moves from solving a problem to a customer to kind of like creating an organization. And, very often it's a very difficult balance to be made, because, you used to be obsessed about the customer. Like some of the best engineers I've met, who are kind of like product engineers, they're really, really speaking to customers using very plain language, trying to understand their problem, etc. But suddenly, as you get elevated into that, pinnacle of the engineering structure, and you're no longer coding that much, and you're getting some metrics from the business, but you're no longer part of maybe regular meetings with product managers. How do you go through, like, what are your sort of learnings, because both of you went through that, I think when for you this is like very recent, so I'm keen to listen to your thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, so just last year, I think it was. I'm originally a tester, so I was doing the testing, but also I was doing development on the website as well, because like it's a small business. Like you pitch in wherever you can, and then like all of a sudden I'm starting to know less and less about the systems, which I've gone over this for quite a few years. Like I keep getting kind of moved into more management positions, but I somehow end up being an individual contributor again. But you know what? I have the most excellent humans. And it's okay because I might not know everything, but I have trust in the humans that they know the more technical stuff. But man, the pain that you feel when you start to lose like a bit of knowledge, like they're talking about parts of the architecture and you're like, I don't really understand that as well as I used to anymore. Like, this is really sad. But yeah, just like having faith in your humans that they know what they're doing is kind of the main thing, I guess. Like, and it's okay. Other people can do that kind of stuff, but you can do the like stuff that actually keeps everything running, especially at this stage when you have to like look, do we actually need a process around this? Maybe it's getting to the point where you do need to put a process in and you can kind of sort that out and make sure that the developers get to do that good kind of stuff, developers and testers and everyone else.
Yeah. And how did you feel about, this? As I recently spoken with a guy who was promoted maybe 9 months ago to an engineering manager at a pretty fast growing firm, Hopin. And he said that it was very confusing for him the first several months, but he's really enjoying his job right now. And he would have a problem to come back to be an individual contributor, a job which he's done more or less 15 years of his career. So I'd be curious to see how this transition, and also, kind of like moving to focus on a completely different sort of, parameters of your success, how it went, in your case, and what were your sort of, learnings and considerations and things that will be, weren't that intuitive in that transition.
Yeah. So because I've transitioned so many times, like I originally went from a tester to a principal test engineer, and the point there was like, okay, so the way that you build quality products is by building happy teams, not by you going in there and actually writing the code anymore. And it took me quite a while, and talking to other people. So if you're moving into one of these positions, make sure you talk to other people, because so many people have been like have had this experience, and it's like it's a bit of a death of yourself moving from individual contributor, like, but yeah, it's still fun, like, and I love it. I love being able to tweak the engineering team with their feedback, of course, to make it better for them. And yeah, so that's kind of the new thing that you do.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
answer the question properly?
Yeah, I think so. I think, in order to be successful in any management role, you just have to embrace the fact that your job is now mostly talking to people rather
Mm-hmm.
than just building things. And
Definitely.
I think, engineering is, I think, an amazing space where you can be very successful for a very long time as an individual contributor and basically spend all your career being such an amazing individual contributor and solving hard problems, etc. But you also get opportunities to move into a management role, which obviously uh, it requires different skills, and it's an opportunity to grow, and it's a different way to measure your success, and it opens up a completely new area of possibilities and challenges. But I think, the key in what you said, my takeaway from that is you have to talk to people, and you have to um, consider it the main part of your job.
It's fun in a different way as well. So like, how when you're working with a code base, it's so amazing to like picture how it hangs all together, not just the architecture, but also like the code itself. And then when you move into one of these roles, you're slotting together all the different parts of the organization. And so there's still a lot of the same skills in it. It's just there's more humans instead of machines.
Yeah. James, I'm very
Yeah,
curious to listen to your story because you were moving from like 6 people and 30 or whatever 6 months old business, and you're now in this rocket ship that's growing super fast, etc. So I'm pretty sure the sort of, the culture and a lot of different things, maybe we're not changing, but we're definitely put to many stress tests. So I would love to see
Yeah.
sort of, personal journey through that with, ups and downs and things you learn. Because
Yeah. So yeah, so just touch on a little bit what Gwen was talking about. That I mean, when I first got involved with the Milkman, it was almost me coming back from doing higher level of management stuff and actually getting, because we're in a startup, right? We're digging in and getting back and doing code, and then I've been on the journey back out of that level of detail over the last year. And so through that, yeah, this time last year in the UK, we had 5 or 6 people in the UK team and a few offshore. We're now at 40 something across tech and product. And that's difficult to grow, 10x in 9 months is effectively what we did. And you're going to bring in lots of new personalities. You've got to bring in lots of people who've come from businesses which have been at different stages. So if they've been working in really established businesses, they're used to particular practices and processes and things going on around you to support. Whilst if you've come from, or if you've been with us from the very early days in the startup bit where everybody's just doing whatever they need to do to get the job done, there's no kind of worries about what people's job titles are or any of that stuff. It's like, here's a bunch of stuff we're going to do, and we're going to try and get it done in the next couple of weeks, and everybody's chipping in. And suddenly you start bringing extra people into that dynamic who are used to being, I'm always, I'm a tester and I just test stuff, or I'm a platform engineer and I'll just spin up, Kubernetes clusters or whatever it might be. It's trying to kind of almost break down a little bit of where they've been from to where we need people to be now. We don't want to lose the kind of dynamic of people being able to contribute to any part of the engineering process. It's kind of what we're founded on, and it gives us the best results rather than kind of start building up all the silos and everything. So culturally, people coming in can find it quite difficult if they come from very established businesses. I like to now talk with the team about we're all just engineers, yeah. Some of the engineers that are brought in have got a deep specialism in React, or you might have a deep specialism in Azure, but we're all engineers together trying to build this thing, trying to save some plastic. So bring and trying to focus, trying to just ensure that everybody knows what the mission is and not get lost in my specialism. This is what we're trying to achieve. Is that easy? No. Does it? Have we? Do we get challenges with that? Yes. But I think the thing we're learning is that the initial, I suppose, management structures and things that we were putting in place probably weren't helping. We're having a head of development and kind of building up lead roles, which were, effective managers and less doing, and you're kind of starting to build this more traditional structure. And we've kind of stopped doing that. We want everybody to be able to, to be contributors. And so the line, when we talk about leads and stuff now within tech, their job is to make sure, as from an individual's point of view, is make sure that the people who are line report to them are happy. They've got got all the stuff and support around them to be able to do a good job. It's not about directing what work they're doing. That's got to come from empowered squads and effective guilds and stuff, and people really working together and contributing. When we grew as fast as we did, what the real kind of psychological difference was, when you're 4 people, 5 people, everybody's in it, they understand what's going on, and they all feel they can contribute. Whatever they're doing is going to make a big impact because there's only so many people about. So what anybody's doing is making a big impact. When you grow as fast as we have, it can be lost on new people. They may not feel that they can make the same levels of impacts. And the work, the stuff that we're going to be working on is something that they've just been asked to do rather than something they can kind of contribute to the way we do it. So that's really the focus now, is kind of ensuring our culture grows up, that everybody who joins us feels that they are able, and not just feels, they just are able to make a contribution, either in the way their particular product is going, or maybe all through guilds, how our processes and stuff are developing.
Yeah. You've mentioned one area that obviously, all of us are observing, which is hiring, which becomes so incredibly different and so incredibly difficult as you scale. And you've mentioned one dimension of it, so kind of like bringing people who are a right fit, so culturally to a startup, etc. But there's so many layers to it. The market is like ultra competitive. So you guys are scale ups, but there are bigger scale ups who raised hundreds of millions, who can obviously pay better. They're pre-IPO, so they can tempt people with equity that's going to be worth more. And they're also Facebooks and Googles of the world, who obviously can pay huge salaries, and their equity is almost liquid from day one. How are you approach? And then there's remote aspect of it. So very often, you're recruiting someone, you're not going to be able to maybe give that same level of support that you were able to do 3-4 years ago when you were working in the same office. I'm pretty keen to listen first to you, Gwen, and then you, James. How are you dealing with these, hiring challenges? What's your approach? How are you looking for people? Did coronavirus change it? Because I think this is it's a huge subject for a lot of people on the audience, both people who are in similar shoes like yours, so leading engineering teams, but also the candidates who may be interested in working for you, and people who are just looking to make the best choices for their career on earlier stages. So I'm very, very interested to listen about that.
Yeah. So pay is difficult because we don't have the money that Facebook has, and all these other huge companies. But what we can do is create a amazing culture. And I joined Glean by accident. I started as a contractor, and then I saw that there were actually tests, and I didn't have to argue about tests, and there were just such beautiful engineering practices. And we have something that you can't get at most other places. I've been in tech for maybe 11 years or something, and I don't have to argue about tests or anything, which is such different for me, such a change for me. So we can get people to refer people in. We're kind of starting to run low on the referrals now because we've kind of scooped up as many people as we can. So there's trying to make the culture good enough that people will actually share on social media and stuff like that. So that's how I'm doing it. But there's also you need more power sometimes. So when you have typically everyone's startup CEO wants to go faster and faster and faster. And so we have had a look at outsourcing and stuff like that. Just getting contractors basically, and outsourcing contractors, not outsourcing to another country or something, just getting some help in while we scale up. Which is a hard sell as well, because you do have the culture, we've built this amazing culture, and you want to make sure that the outsourcers understand your culture and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's a difficult problem. And I haven't solved it. We're not scaling up as fast as I'd like. Definitely not as fast as the CEO would like. But I'm learning. So I'm tweaking the job descriptions, trying to get better SEO so people can actually find us and stuff like that, looking at where to advertise and all that kind of stuff. There's a question in the chat about diversity and inclusion. Do you want me to answer that at the same time, or do you want me to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, because part of, what James said is, as you scale, you try to bring people who fit the culture. How do you deal with diversity, etc. Especially that, I think, it's the case for us. It's probably the case for many companies, like what you said. So people you have bring other people, which is maybe not the best way to ensure diversity. So I'm quite keen to listen to your thoughts on that.
Definitely not. So our engineering culture is pretty white, because we've gotten a lot of people from another company that was a pretty white company, and so what, advertising outside of just your group and community brings the amount of CVs I'm getting in. I get to speak to candidates that don't look the same as us, so that's useful. So don't rely too much on just referrals, otherwise you're just building a lack of diversity, basically. So yeah, I'm wanting to improve that. It's a great question, Felix. Thank you.
And James, what are your challenges? I think my takeaways from what Gwen said is that it's right now super challenging, and it's sort of like a constant experimentation and trying to tweak things to be able to hire faster. What's your perspective on that and experience with it, especially that we've heard you were growing quite fast throughout the coronavirus period?
Yeah. We actually, as a business, started with an offshore team. So the very first platform stuff were built with a team out in India, and we've continued to have offshore as a part of the mix. So we now have 2 teams in India and a team in Romania. So we do use that, but pretty much all the growth over the last 12 months has been building out the UK presence. And so one of the findings, I suppose, is when we're out there, if we just go out there and throw out a normal kind of software engineering spec, and kind of an decent salary, you're not really selling what we're about. The people who, when we get in front of people in the first stages or whatever, and we're talking about the business, I think almost without exception, we've kind of got people on board at that point. Okay, we've hired people who've had higher salary offers than we've given, mostly because they fit, joining a place where, well, they get it that you're going to make a difference, and so your job has got, you get a load of satisfaction if you feel like you're producing the right thing. Not to cast aspersions on your betting companies or whatever else might be out there. If you're working with us, you should have a sense of satisfaction, that you're doing something more rewarding, and more what's the right word? Basically, you're doing tech for good. Yeah.
No, you're doing something meaningful that's gonna make the whole environment around. I found this as something that's really helping us at Tech3. So our mission at Tech3 is to enable people to create value, unlock value from their personal networks, knowledge, and data, because they're basically being stolen for the likes of Stack Overflow, Google, LinkedIn, and I think people are pissed, and I think it massively helps us to talk to engineers and bring them on board.
I think, the way the engineering market is and salaries are what they are, it's not really now. We're not in an industry where it's about having pay that you can live off. Everybody's in our industry pretty much is doing well compared to the wider world, and so there are good numbers of people looking for that extra difference. It's not all about the extra 5k they might get. The other thing, I suppose, which is easier from coming from a startup, for engineers coming in, you haven't got real legacy. It's one of the, and there's still plenty of greenfield to go at. So we've got kind of 3 big tickets that help attract good talent in, because typically people want to work on new stuff, either new tech or building a new system. And if you can layer that in with it, contributing to doing something good whilst also getting decent reward, we've got a fairly compelling package. The challenge in that is when people have not heard of us, how do you get that across in, you know, what maybe our recruitment agents are doing, or from a boring or looking job spec, how do you get across that that's what you're coming for? So it's kind of, yeah, putting that out there and trying to stand above the rest of the crowd with that message. It's challenging.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think, you know, what I find interesting from what you've said is that, you know, you are able to present the cool things that people will build, because, you know, good engineers who have good salaries, if they want to move, that's probably, you know, part of the mix, that you want to build something cool, something new, something that's going to be different than others. So I think, you know, it's a good point. And James, there's one question in the chat directed at you. How do you ensure quality on outsourced projects? And have you found that the quality is as good as your in-house projects? I think, you know, it's a very interesting question, because obviously
yes, and it's definitely a challenge. So, I mean, very early days with our Indian teams, we were quite prescriptive in making sure that, you know, in the kind of specs and stuff, well, the stories that they were working from. But what we did find, because when we did that, we didn't just try and treat the guys there as code monkeys or whatever else. Whenever we were talking through the stories, we kind of set the scene. What is this achieving? And as we went through the first few months of, you know, fairly hand-holding the quality of the software being produced, they started to get it. And it takes long. It took longer than UK. But they did start to get it. And a few months in, they're starting to tell me that some of the ideas are a bit rubbish. And that's great, because they were. They could have been better. So it was a slow burn getting those guys up to speed. And yeah, we brought a few more in, and you kind of start back a little bit. So that's why it's really a blend. The squads are blended. It's not a full offshore team, and then there's another squad which is a full off a UK team. We kind of try and bring everybody together. Unfortunately, COVID has kind of stopped us doing some of the kind of getting out and meeting one another. But just before Christmas, our Romanian team came over and spent a week with us, which was fantastic. They went out and did a milk round and really got into the business. We want our teams to understand the business. We encourage everybody in the UK, and I'd say got people over from Romania to go out and get on a milk round and really get to understand us. And I think quality comes from understanding what we're trying to achieve, not just, you know, understanding what particular lines of code or what a particular test we think we're going to need to run.
Yeah. And one thing that I think, you know, comes with a package of working in a startup is the sort of, you know, the founding team, usually a bunch of people with crazy ambitions and not too much understanding for what's realistic in the, you know, world as we live in it. How do you find yourself in managing that environment, right? Because, you know, on one hand, usually, and, you know, I can speak in the first person, like, yes, it's great that I, you know, have an idea, etc., but then it's very hard for me to understand what's realistic in the, you know, short term, mid term, etc. And it's a lot of back and forth. And obviously we're a smaller team, but I'm curious how this dynamics evolves where you are, and how, you know, part of your job is becoming to maybe, you know, bring these ideas to something that's possible to execute in a predictable time frame. And, you know, what are the challenges and how you're dealing with them? Because I'm sure, you know, this is also the big difference that, you know, you mentioned between working in a startup, doing something cool, and working in a much more mature organization where, you know, it's your job is from here to there, and that's it. So I'm quite keen how you sort of, you know, marry the water with fire.
So I think I touched on some of that when I was talking earlier. We've gone through a learning. So early days we didn't have things like product owners and all that kind of stuff. And we did start building, as you were kind of saying, this is what you do and all that a little bit. I'm seeing some of the issues around that. And you do end up, can start building a culture that you just do what you're asked to do, kind of thing. So we've seen those, and we're changing. So we're pushing the culture to be very much like when there's sprint planning sessions or backlog reviews or whatever. That's not about a presented list of these are the things, this we're going to build this system and this system, we're going to build button X and Y. There should be conversations about what are we going to achieve, what are the what we're trying to do in the next quarter. Is that expanding into more areas? Is it increasing the product range? Is it improving is it making the drive app more reliable or whatever? And then get the squads much more involved in kind of actually thinking and innovating, rather than being fed ideas. But yeah, that's where we're at now and what we're trying to be now. I think that's a much better place to kind of tackle some of those challenges you were talking about.
I think one of the most important early hires you can have is a really amazing UX or UI designer, like someone who understands design thinking and can run those kind of sessions with your teams, because engineers have amazing ideas, and being able to get that out is so important in building a beautiful product, I think, especially if you have a diverse team. So yeah.
We were really lucky actually at that point, Gwen. The actual very first person who was kind of tech in the modern Meltman really is a UX guy. He came from a background where he would do some tech, and he was just kind of he would put together WordPress systems, but actually his thinking was very much UX, and he's still with us today. He's our UX lead now. And yeah, that really, really helped in the early days, making sure that we were building the right kind of things.
Yeah, and I think this is really funny because I'm in process of writing a summary of 2021 to my investors, and one of the 4 major learnings that I mentioned was, if I could do something differently, I would hire a UX person, a great UX person, as early as possible. And even if that would be one day, but have a week or something, but having this amazing UX person, from my experience, make communication between commercial teams and engineering just speak the same language. And I definitely think this is really cool. But Gwen, I would also love to have your take on sort of dealing with the founder dynamics of great vision, super ambitions, multiplied by expectations of investors, and then the reality of how to calmly pass it as a structured input to your engineers.
My God, it is hard. Founders are amazing and they're so ambitious, but sometimes that's not quite married with the reality of building software. It's hard what we do, and so explaining that can be really difficult as well. And it doesn't you don't always win. Not everyone's happy sometimes, but it you try and you look at ways that you can reduce scope and all of these kind of things. But yeah, in the end, it's always going to be hard at a startup to negotiate these kind of things. And you have to accept it and get damn good at negotiating, is my opinion on that. So I've spoken to loads of people about their CEOs, because as I said, I'm quite new to this, and this is what it's like, apparently. They have loads of ambitions, and you just you can't fulfill all of them. But yeah, that's kind of okay. That's the game that you have to play. How to keep the CEO happy, how to make sure that you're giving him enough biscuits. Yeah, basically.
Any tips?
Sorry.
Yeah. Any tips for like useful techniques in terms of communication, negotiation, just frameworks that work for you to make this communication effective?
So I guess we originally didn't have kind of time box times for how long things were going to be delivered and how we could check in and all these kind of things. So what was really interesting was one of the problems I thought that we had was a problem between product and engineering and the way that we communicated. But the problem apparently wasn't that. Apparently it was the way that we communicated with like the rest of the business, particularly the CEO, about like what we were working on and how long things were taking. And so setting regular check-ins to say what we're working on over the next time period and what we've done in the last time period sounds pretty damn obvious, but that's how you can win more faith from the CEO, and making the company more like, when you get to a certain stage, you have to make it more product led instead of like visionary CEO kind of led. Because we're getting feedback from the customers and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, great, you've got this idea, but we need to actually test and make sure it works. We can't just build like everything that, like, you've got wonderful ideas, but we can't build all of those things. We need to validate that these are the right things to build first, which, takes a long time to be able to like change. And we're still on that journey. But if you want the business to like keep moving, you need to be able to like take the reins away and say, we need to be able to test these ideas and do it properly.
Yeah, no, great answer. And I think, just for the audience, we have several minutes left. So I'm going to go to some more questions from the audience. And if you're looking to ask a question, that's your last second. So there's a question from Simon one question from him to James, and one to Gwen. How have the mixed teams impacted your UK-based devs? Do they find the hand-holding frustrating after a while? This is a question to you, Simon. To you, James.
Yeah. I did actually type a reply as well. I didn't think we'd get there. So as I was saying, we kind of started with offshore teams, and then we built the UK. So actually, for the last, for this year, last year, it's been more of the other way around. Is that the new guys come in and have had to learn from what we've got from somebody offshore. So then when we've maybe had a bit of churn, or there's another person come in one of those offshore teams, people are used to it, and it's kind of, we're actually giving back now, helping give back. So it's not proving too much of an issue right now. I suppose over time, as we grow further and do more and more new stuff, which have started in the UK, then but what we're trying to do is, when we're doing that stuff, is that because they're mixed squads, they're from the beginning, they're in the same design sessions. It's not really a thing that we now then have to go and write, our offshore team an extra bit of spec to get that to work. Everybody's remote, so what's the difference between the guy who's sat in Cluj in Romania over the guy who's sat in Grimsby? Not a lot. The way we have to work together is the same. So as we've grown, I suppose the dynamic is that we're not doing that kind of level of hand holding and stuff anymore, because everybody's in that same place, I suppose.
Yeah, great. And Gwen, one more question to you. How have you managed integrating contractors into teams at Glean? Does your approach differ from James? Obviously, my understanding is you're working with like individual contractors rather than sort of software houses outsourcing. But
so we had a couple of contractors. Like, I was a contractor at first, and that was fine. Like, it's just like throw people in a team and it will be fine. So what we did with we got like a consultancy, and we had them come in as a team to work on a feature. which didn't work because there was so much overhead. And, you know, you want these people to be part of your organization and understand how you work so they can adhere to the same levels of quality and all these kind of things. So we changed that. So they're now integrated into our teams, and that will be how it is going forwards. Like, we will not have teams working on separate things. Yeah. But there was one question that we missed. Do we have enough time to just answer Megan's question?
Yeah.
So Megan, you asked a fantastic question, which I'm really passionate about. So I really loved Gwen's point about the importance of ensuring there's time for feedback. Do you have any tips or practices on the best way to encourage feedback, both from devs in your team and from the wider company as a whole? Yes. So like, everyone runs their software teams as a democracy, hopefully. And so you should be getting like feedback as early as possible. So there's like the standard ways of retros and stuff like that. But when you make any massive change, start talking about it early, like, so people can be like, why are you doing that? And hold sessions on like, okay, we're making this big change. We'd love to hear your feedback. Like, early and often as possible, create feedback channels, whether that's within Slack, make yourself open, and all of these like things like that. So whenever you do something as well, sending out forms to ask afterwards. So after every retro, for example, we send out a feedback form on like, can you, like, how did you enjoy the retro kind of thing? Like, would you like different people to run it, and all those kind of things. Yeah. So from the wider company as the whole. So we do retros with our stakeholders as well when we're doing like projects. Like, I hate the word projects, but like, you know, like features, basically, not a project. No one wants to say that. And yeah, that's that. Thank you for the question, Megan. It was great.
Cool. And sorry for missing it.
No,
And yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for some really great insights. We have to finish, but I would say to close it off, like, you know, if you have, you know, from, you know, where you are now, like one piece of advice to your peers or, you know, people who want to become leaders of or engineering organizations, like, what would that be? Because I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, we believe is less common in engineering world than it is in maybe other areas is these, you know, opportunities for knowledge sharing with peers, etc. And I find that for a lot of engineers, especially when they become managers, head of engineers, CTOs, it's actually super helpful to build that. So maybe some words of wisdom from, you know, your side on some of the most important, I know, learning insights about the job.
You do not have to go down the management track. So there has been a massive change where there's like, you know, staff engineers and all of this kind of stuff. So if you don't want to go down the management track, don't go down it. Become a staff engineer or whatever. But if you're interested in it, like, Lead Dev Conference has some really good stuff around this. Like, find the community so you can research and find out the best ways how to do it, because it is a totally different skill set. And yeah, I am learning so much still. So yeah.
Great insight.
I think the thing is, you've got to, when you get in the place, you've got to trust your team. You've got to have good people, and don't manage them, lead them, I think is the thing. Don't get in their way. Give them the goals and where they need to take stuff, and let them do it, and then help when they need it.
Thanks, guys. I really enjoyed the talk, and yeah, of course, you know, both companies are hiring. So, you know, if you want to work with amazing Gwen and James, that's your opportunity to reach out to them. And yeah, I hope this was useful for everyone. So that's it from us.